Well, welcome back to the Equip for Life podcast. It's been a while since we recorded these. I don't even know exactly what order we're putting everything out or when these are going out. We know that we want to get back podcasting again. It is time. And we have a really awesome team to do that. And so it's been sort of a crazy time in ERI. Maybe we'll get into that at some point, but we haven't been podcasting in a while and it's been too long. And now it is time to come back. So there are some episodes we've recorded in the past that haven't been put out yet. I think we're still going to put those out. We've actually got some really cool episodes with Rebecca here in studio that we recorded a while ago, and those haven't been edited and put out yet. So we're kind of getting the podcast put all back together. And frankly, we've been kind of reimagining it. We've been imagining a new version of the Equip for Life podcast that's usually the three of us and is usually maybe fewer interviews of me interviewing really cool people and more discussions of the three of us and sometimes other staff members about some of the things that are going on. And so I am just so excited to have both of you on at the same time. I've recorded a lot of podcasts with Emily, which is always just great and amazing. I've recorded podcasts with Rebecca, which was as amazing as I expected it to be, but no one else has potentially heard those yet. So I'm the only one that knows that those are really well. So I want us to kind of like, for the sake of new listeners, kind of reintroduce us a little bit, especially Rebecca, because there are just so many people that like maybe they've been watching Emily on TikTok for a while, or maybe they've heard speeches or podcasts that I did a while back, but they might not know the treasure that has come to ERI since then. That who has mainly been behind the scenes, unless you're watching our TikTok videos. So Rebecca Carlson is here. And I'm going to set you up a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit. I want you to flesh this out and fill in. But I am always so excited to talk about Rebecca, especially in this moment in abortion dialogue that is really hard. And it's just harder now for reasons that we'll probably get into in future episodes. It's harder to have dialogues about abortion now than it was when we started ERI 10 or 11 years ago now. And so Rebecca is our newest staff person and has given me so much hope for what the future can be because, one, Rebecca was running our affiliate group at USC, University of Southern California, post Dobbs. And you were having amazing dialogues. You were running this club and having really, really great dialogues, which gives me hope. So can you tell us a little bit about the thesis that came out of that for you? What was the big lesson that you took from the fact that you were having these dialogues in a post-Dobbs environment at USC, and yet those dialogues were still going well? Because your thesis continues to give me hope, and I think I tell everyone at about every single meeting I have.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it actually started with teaching philosophy students at USC. So I taught them basically versions of ERI's dialogue tips. I said, this is a discussion section. I'm leading a discussion section as your TA. I have decided that it is my job to teach you how to discuss. So we talked about lecture material. I didn't leave them hanging when it came to understanding the things they needed for their exams, but I also used that as fodder to teach them, here's how philosophers have discussions in ways that enable us to make progress, get clarity about the root of our disagreement, and be able to have a productive conversation in a way that honors the fact that this might really matter. In particular, the abortion topic really matters. And so do obviously a bunch of the other political things that lead to bad dialogues. Often the reason people get angry is because they really care. And they really care because they really should, because it really matters. And I found that all of my students, regardless of their kind of political background, all really wanted to be able to do good dialogue well. And none of them could do it. And then the best news, nobody knew how.
It wasn't just that the pro-choice people couldn't do it.
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah, not my pro-life students, not my pro-choice students, not my conservative students, not my liberal students, not my religious students, not my atheists or secular students. Nobody came into my class knowing how to do this. But the best news I found, the like thesis that I got really excited about, both in my philosophy classes and then when I taught kind of the same dialogue habits to my club and started talking with pro-choice students, was that good dialogue habits are contagious.
Yeah.
So I don't have to teach both people in a dialogue how to dialogue well in order to make good dialogue happen. I only have to teach one of them. I think oftentimes pro-life people tend to think it doesn't matter what my dialogue approach is because the pro-choice person will never go for it. I can't make a good dialogue happen single-handedly, and pro-choice people are just not interested. So
Yeah.
good dialogue is not possible. And
Right.
what I found through hundreds of my own conversations with pro-choice students, through my fellow club members' conversations, and through my students' conversations is that that's not true. If I can fix my own dialogue approach, it's contagious. I can teach you, imaginary pro-choice person, how to dialogue well, not by like giving you a lecture about it, but just by doing it myself, by clearly communicating and demonstrating I care about you, I care about understanding where you're coming from, and I am open to being influenced by your arguments. I'm open-minded to you in the same way that I'm asking you to be open-minded to me.
Now, this kind of brings up one of the other awesome things about Rebecca and what Rebecca brings to the table, because I imagine if anyone else is like me, pretty early in that story, people are like, wait, she was teaching philosophy students. Like, how, like, what position and for people who have been around ERI for a long time, like from the beginning, we had this kind of cool part of our origin story that my brother Tim and I came together to form something kind of by combining the best of our strengths kind of together. And there were strengths that I brought to the table, and there were strengths that my brother Tim brought to the table that were different and worked really, really well together. And Tim's DNA is still all over ERI and some of the things that make ERI great and some of the great content that's there. But we went separate directions. I went full-time into the pro-life movement and just started doing work, and I was not going and working on college. I was recommended not to work on college right now, just work on it until like when you're 40 kind of a thing. And Tim went straight into Biola and got a bachelor's in philosophy and went through the Torrey Institute, and that training really helped him to create a lot of the content that we have that is meant to be very nuanced and high level and thoughtful. And unfortunately, not everyone is called to be in the pro-life movement for their entire lives. It's really hard. And so Tim was here for 5 years, and as I've told people before, if I could have picked any 5 years, if Michael the Archangel had shown up in a dream in the beginning of this and said, you get 5 years with Tim, you get to pick which 5 years, I would have picked the first 5 years. Like, that foundation is so great. We're still being helped by that. But unfortunately, Tim's not here now. Rebecca helps bring some of that back to the table because Rebecca does not, and I know Rebecca wouldn't say it this way, so I'm going to say it. Rebecca does not just have her bachelor's in philosophy. She does not just have her master's in philosophy. Rebecca is one dang finished dissertation away from having her doctorate in philosophy, which I think, I'm not positive. I don't know if that would make, I think that would make you the only doctorate of philosophy full-time in the pro-life movement.
I think that's true.
Double check that, but I'm almost positive
We need to double check that because that is huge bragging rights. Holy cow.
Because it's
Rebecca, you're amazing.
It's not what typically doctorate of philosophy people do. You don't go full-time into the pro-life movement. Like, philosophers teach and write and hang out with a bunch of other philosophers, and a lot of times that work ends up being more academic. And part of what, like, the intended magic of ERI was, what if you take people like Tim, who are really smart, but also have a lot of outreach experience and are actually good at doing outreach and doing that thinking outside the box, like innovative thing, that kind of important quality, and bring that to the table. And Rebecca is so good at that. Rebecca is so smart, and I'm just so excited every time Rebecca gets her hands into our content. The stuff that was already good, by the way, a lot of it, she's upgrading it. She's making it smarter and wiser. Not just like intellectual, like book smart. Our stuff is getting wiser and more pro-human. Oh my gosh, there's so many things I'm excited about Rebecca, but I'm saying too much. So Rebecca, maybe if you could just fill in a little bit on your academic training and how you're bringing that to ERI, what you're hoping to do with that. What do you see as like your role, your hopeful role? Like we always ask people, like I always ask, what is like your dream pro-life job description? Like how close can I give that to you? What is your dream pro-life job? What are you doing?
Yeah. So I think it's actually really important for philosophers in general to talk to non-philosophers. Sometimes teaching undergraduates can do that to some degree for philosophers, but also sometimes philosophers can get like siloed in communities where they only ever talk to other philosophers and they only ever talk in philosophy jargon. And I think it's actually been really, really interesting and helpful for me, even just with tabling with my pro life club, to go back and forth between having like super jargony conversations with philosophers and talking with undergrads, even like outside of a philosophy classroom, where I'm not asking questions like, what grounds personhood? I'm asking, like, what's the thing that gives you and me our equal right to be protected from violence? What's the thing where if you have it, you're in the Equal Rights Club, but if you don't, you're not? And so I think
You're
it's
not saying,
actually,
what is that non-degreed property? You're not saying that
yeah,
to
no,
people. Yeah. Okay.
unfortunately. And fortunately. I think it's very fortunate, actually. I think philosophers actually talk about this in academic philosophy in general terms. There's this thing called public philosophy. Philosophers who like write for the New York Times or other like popular level publications, speak to popular audiences, write books for popular audiences, things like that. And I think it's a really, really helpful thing. And I think it would be helpful for the pro-life movement to have more connection and more discussion among pro-life academics, pro-life academic philosophers in particular is my sphere, obviously, and people working full-time in the pro-life movement. So my hope is to go back and forth and kind of create more conversations between those two groups of people. Here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want it to be that like the pro-life philosophers who are working full-time in academia go off in a room by themselves, come up with, here are all the best arguments, and then like pass them off through a door that they're not really talking through. And then the pro-life activists take that and figure out how to translate it into dialogue. I actually want that to be a conversation that goes both ways, because I think philosophers, like, it's a weird kind of specialization, because it does give me some level of expertise and knowledge. Like there are terms that I could throw at you that you wouldn't know because I've spent a lot of years in this.
Right.
But also a lot of like what you learn in philosophy is not like a set of premises or a set of assumptions behind a discipline, but a way of thinking. And that's teachable. Like I think there are ways that in a dialogue, my brain kind of figures out where this might be going faster because I've done this a lot, but not in a way that like puts me in a room by myself where I can like talk on this level and nobody else can. I think philosophers, if I can't communicate my ideas to someone who is intelligent and interested, then that's a me problem. And I don't want to be there. So I want to be in this conversation. And then also I want pro-lifers who are having these real apologetics conversations with pro-choice people to feel like they are doing the thinking themselves and to be doing the thinking themselves. I don't want them to be reciting talking points. I want them to be having a genuine discussion with a pro-choice person. And that means that the pro-life philosophers aren't the only ones doing the thinking. It's the whole pro-life movement.
Yeah, like I mean, see, that feels so ERI because it's like I mean, beyond it is. I think generally accepted wisdom that it is smarter for smart people to try to explain their ideas in simple terms and not use literally like vocabulary words that are going over people's heads. Like this, I struggle with this sometimes. I like a big vocabulary and I like to use those words and I find them helpful and everything. They're good words. Am I occasionally signaling intellect to people I'm speaking to? Yes, maybe, and sometimes that's not always helpful to them. Sometimes people find that really annoying, which is frustrating to me because I'm like, these are good words. Like, let's just learn the words together. I get so excited when someone teaches me a new word. Like, let's learn it together. But some people find that really off-putting, and so like. Beyond the generally accepted wisdom, okay, let's try to not, be, constantly using big, philosophical words with people. Like we've even talked about, I've written about not naming logical fallacies by their name. It is one thing to memorize a bunch of logical fallacies and be able to list them off and do Latin at people, but a lot of times they end up finding that off-putting and annoying. And so then it's like, okay, well, can you explain the logical fallacy that you feel like you see them making, but then not say, I think you're begging the question or you're committing this fallacy or this fallacy. Can you just like explain, like, I feel like what I see here is like you're saying this and it seems like this thing, and just kind of doing that, like, come back and help fill this out for me. But it's like there's something courteous, I think, and loving in the process of simplifying the ideas and trying to kind of communicate this as well as you can for the person that is in front of you in a way that's like you're meant to be helping them as much as possible, not necessarily showing off as much as possible.
Yeah, I think if you want to like sound smart and sound snobby, you use words that the person you're talking with doesn't understand. If you want to actually make progress in the conversation, you use words that they do understand. And I think it's also just really good for you. Like the first
Hmm.
time I had to think about, okay, this person I'm talking to is committing the ad hoc fallacy, but I can't use those words. What am I trying to say? And if I can't do that, like if I can't explain, here's why your reasoning is faulty without using the Latin phrase,
Yeah.
then I don't actually understand it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's very good for me too. And that's a large part of why I think it's really, really good for philosophers in general to talk to non-philosophers about philosophy.
That's a really good example too, because ad hoc is one of those things that once you know it, you can kind of see it a lot of times, but it's hard to like, if someone like, right, and we're like, define ad hoc fallacy right now. It's harder to put that one into like a concise sentence than like question begging or ad hominem fallacies and some of like the more like the ones that everyone kind of knows. Like, be like forcing yourself to be like, okay, I have to try to explain this and I cannot say ad hoc. That's kind of hard. That's kind of like that's pro level, but that's like the kind of thing that we want to teach people how to do because it is going to be way more helpful for that other person. And I agree, it's more helpful for you because you better be able to explain how they're being ad hoc if you're going to say ad hoc anyway. Like they might be like, I don't think so. So that you better be able to explain it anyway. So yeah. Before we move on, we have to talk a little bit about the amazing fact that we have hired another musical theater kid here at ERI.
It's awesome.
If people, we're going to link to it. If you have not seen Rebecca's TikTok video based on Wicked, you have to see it. It is fabulous and
so good.
shows off Rebecca's amazing musical theater kid acting skills. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your musical theater background? Because it was just amazing how like we all talked about this as a staff recently, and then the next day TikTok is showing me a video about how everyone needs to hire theater kids. They're the best. They can always get everything done with no budget and all this stuff. Like they're fantastic, and I'm like, we did that. So this is one other cool way that you are awesome. So tell everyone a little bit about your musical theater background.
Well, I have loved acting ever since I was very tiny. I spent 3 years from like the age of 3 to the age of 6 just like playing Belle from Beauty and the Beast 100% of the time.
Oh, no way! That makes so much sense.
Wait, did you like have a little play Belle dress that you would wear all the time too? Or
I
was it
did
just, like,
have
your
a play Belle
personality?
dress at least at one point. I didn't get to wear it all the time, but yeah. At one point, my parents told the story. They had some friends over or something, and friends walked in, and I was like, shoulder heaving, sobbing on the couch, and they said, "Oh no, what's wrong? What?" And my dad's like, "No, she's fine. She's just acting." And yeah, sure enough, Belle was upset.
way.
Rebecca was fine.
No way. So you were like a child
cute.
prodigy at this. Wow. So then what did you do with that? So you were this like natural little acting kid who loves Belle and therefore I'm sure reading and all of the other things that you got into. But like how did that continue to kind of flourish in your life?
Yeah, so I did all the theater I could all through school. Played Portia in The Merchant of Venice in 6th grade. It was great. My 2 best friends were my 2 ladies in waiting. It was pretty perfect. And then like did theater all through high school. My summer job was musical theater, putting on vacation Bible schools at various churches and camps. And then I minored in theater in undergrad. And I say minored in theater. The like classes, like that time commitment amounts to a minor. The time that I put into like theater itself was Sunday to Thursday, 7 to 10 p.m. rehearsals, like
Wow.
most of the year for most of the years I was there. So it's like at least the level of commitment of a sport, I think. It's kind of insane, but also very fun. So did a bunch of acting there too.
Were you doing a lot of? Were you? I'm imagining you were on stage, you were acting, or were you typically like? Or were you doing both singing and acting? Or were you ever doing behind stage stuff? I've never asked you. I'm just like curious now.
Yeah, I did a lot of acting. So here's the thing. I love stage managing. I
Yeah.
refused to give up acting opportunities in order to stage manage, which means I acted in all the things I could act in. And then I stage managed all the things I couldn't, like dance concerts. So I made myself even more busy to try to get some stage managing in there in addition without sacrificing the acting.
You are
This is not
insane.
shocking to me.
There was one week
Anything
I spent 50 hours in the theater building. Don't do
Oh
that.
my word.
Yeah, but it shows your dedication and maybe how it was that you were able to so effectively pull off Glinda from Wicked, as well as other characters too. So maybe this would be a fun way to kind of like just for those who, if this is the first of our podcast that they're listening to, like just like really quickly, like Emily also has some musical
Mhm.
background. So maybe we can talk just a little bit about the ways that we have kind of a shared musical. It's not all exactly the same, I don't think, but we have
No.
there's some overlap on a Venn diagram between the
There
three of
is
us.
there's
Let's
a
find
lot of
it.
overlap between Rebecca and I, and there's weirdly overlap between pretty much the entire ERI staff. Like it's kind of crazy how many people have weird musical backgrounds happening. So I also was a theater kid growing up. I spent 8 years working at a musical theater summer camp. Like Rebecca and I share identically that story, which is crazy. My undergrad degree is in vocal music education. So I have a BM in vocal music education from St. Olaf College. I sang in the St. Olaf Choir and toured internationally with them. And I have a K-12 music teaching license. Obviously, I am not using it because I work for ERI, but technically I do still have an active K-12 vocal music teaching license, so I could be a high school choir teacher if I wanted to. And I did spend, obviously, I did my student teaching and all of that. So I did spend time actually teaching high school choir and loving it. And I do teach a little bit on the side right now. Fun fact, I have some students that come to my house in the evenings and I teach voice lessons and I love it. It's a fun way to keep that like part of me alive as I love teaching voice. I especially love teaching musical theater to like middle school, high school girls is like my dream. I love middle school, high school girls who are just kind of like finding their voice for the first time. It is so much fun. So that's my
Hmm.
musical background. Josh, I don't think many people know about yours because I know I didn't until I was working for ERI for like a year. And then I was like, wait, what? So
Really?
I think we need to like camp on that for a hot second.
Okay. Well, I turned down a music career to do pro-life work instead. I loved music growing up. I don't have any theater background. I've never acted. I don't know if I would have been good at that. I definitely would have been probably too stage afraid to do that. But I was naturally musical from a really young age. I took guitar lessons when I was 4 for a couple of years and really liked that. And then took a lot of piano lessons and got involved on worship teams when I was like 11, which is too young for little kids to be on worship teams. But was, yeah, really, really loved music, picked up guitar and drums, was composing music. One of my songs got played on Fox News a while back for like 9/11 anniversaries because they were looking for 9/11 music, and I'd happened to written my piano music based on that. I love music. I think I am sometimes my happiest when I'm playing good music with other really good musicians, which hasn't been a common enough thing lately. I'm trying to get back into it, kind of try to force myself back into music, but I love music. And Emily, we did a podcast a while back where just kind of spontaneously in it, we kind of realized that maybe some of our musical background had affected the way that we think about dialogue or it informed the way that we are as dialogue people. I wonder if it would be worth like expanding a little bit on that and giving Rebecca a chance to chime in on that, because just like, I mean, one thing off the top of my head, like we were talking about is like, as musicians, singers, theater people, we are so used to trying to iterate, to perfect, to make things better. we're pretty used to not having things sound very good the first time that we attempt them and having to kind of go through okay, we're going to go through this process. We're used to even doing that with groups of people, with like getting together in bands and being like kind of like having this trade-off, like let's try to like help each other all get better at this. And we were
Mhm.
thinking maybe that makes us more open to doing that in dialogue and trying to like always improving dialogue. And so I loved it. Like Emily, feel free to add anything to
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that you'd like to, but I'd also love Rebecca to get a chance to chime in. Like, how do you think that your musical background, your musical theater background affected or improved on the way that you do dialogue and think about dialogue?
I think you're 100% right, Josh. And I want to give like a very concrete example because everybody knows I went to St. Olaf. I talk about that all the time. And St. Olaf, for people who may not know about St. Olaf, is a very heavy music school. I mean, they have degrees in all the things, but like 2/3 of the student body participates in the music department.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. And when I think about the Pro Life Club, when I was running it at St. Olaf, we were like 80% music majors. I think there was like one kid in the club that didn't participate in music at all. There was a few people that weren't music majors but also participated in the music department, and then we were just all music majors. We had a lot of violinists, weirdly. There were just like so many violinists, and then multiple vocal music education majors as well. But anyways, my point is, when I now work with other clubs as part of our affiliate group program, and I mentor them and I teach them how to do practice dialogue, I notice in a way that I didn't notice when I was teaching my own club how to do it, that can be really intimidating and scary for people. And that kind
Mm.
of was weird to me at first. But then I realized the rest of society, we don't do this kind of thing very often, where we like all sit around and we like do something in front of other people, like practice a dialogue or perform a song or something like that, and then have people give us feedback live that we then try to incorporate and improve on. What I have just described is what we do in our pro life club meetings when we're practice dialoguing, and also what we do in studio class every single week when you're a music major. You go in, you have your professor, you have all the other people in your voice studio. People get up and they sing. The voice professor gives them live feedback. Sometimes they ask other students to give feedback as well. That's just a thing that we are taught as music majors, that we constantly have to be performing in front of other people and accepting feedback from them and not getting offended about it. Like, we're just all here to help each other. And so when I introduced the idea of practice dialoguing to my club, it wasn't weird to anyone. We were all like, this is what we do all day long in the music department. So of course we're going to do that here. And now I teach it to other clubs, and I realize it takes guts to do that. And it takes kind of a little getting used to. But my club didn't have to have that getting used to it phase because we were all music majors. So I think it really affects kind of the way that, we think about how to practice talking to other people and how to improve being pro-life advocates.
All right, I have a thought too, but Rebecca, let's jump to you since you haven't had a chance to tap in on this one yet. How has your musical background influenced you as the wonderful dialogue person I know that you are, dialoguer, advocate?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I don't have the like professional level of music background that you and Emily do. I took voice lessons all through high school and college, and I was in church choirs and college choir. And yeah, I always really enjoyed it. I think I'm much more naturally an actor than a singer. I've had to work pretty hard to get singing up to a level that I'm like. But I think there's also acting has a similar like you try things and you're like vulnerable and you kind of go crazy in acting classes. A lot of like early stage acting classes are getting people comfortable doing things that are generally uncomfortable. At USC, actually, sometimes when we were tabling, there'd be a group of theater kids that came out and just like skipped around the square and like yelled, which was great because they made us look normal. But just to get people out of their comfort zone and okay with that. And then there's also receiving feedback and things like that. I think in particular, the place I'm most noticed acting training coming up is like playing a pro-choice person in practice dialogues. Like I'm very practiced at like getting inside the head of someone who has very different life experiences from me and very different opinions from me. And kind of thinking, how would they look at this? How would they see this? How would they feel about it? And of course, getting in the heads of different kinds of pro-choice people for, in particular, like more advanced practice dialogues. But pro-choice people aren't all the same. And being able to like communicate that to pro-life people that I'm teaching is helpful there.
So I love that was your answer, because that was basically the thing that I was about to say too. I was thinking, because I reflected on it this morning, and just like, in what ways has being a musician affected me as a dialogue person? And one of the things that came to my mind was just like, I wonder if being musical has made it easier for me to connect with people who are different, with like, quote unquote, alternative people. Like I might never have the looks of Shawn Mendes or Harry Styles. I mean, more of a ZZ Top, than anything else, and that's okay, because I'm usually hanging out with other kind of nerdy musicians like me, who are making amazing music together, and we can do these things together. And a lot of times, like jamming with, especially like non-Christian musicians, like just getting to hang out for a first time with a bunch of just new guys, and we set up our gear and play and jam and connect at this kind of transcendental level. Like, we like each other, we're enjoying each other's company, and it has nothing to do with our beliefs, and it has nothing to do with our religious systems or any of that. Like, all of that can come later, but in the beginning, we've just kind of entered into this kind of judgment-free space of, we're just gonna connect. And I guess I wonder, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I wonder if that has made it easier for me to be, I don't know, like, less afraid or weirded out by outsiders of the church in the way that a lot of my friends who were homeschooled ended up sometimes being. A little bit kind of a, hey, they're secular, so they're like, we're a little bit afraid of what might happen there, what influence might they have on us. And I just like hanging out with like other nerdy cool people. It doesn't matter. Like, yeah, there's a thought that I had.
I have an interesting question that I feel like, I don't know. I want to hear what Rebecca thinks about this first. So I got this question in the DMs of our Instagram. First of all, if you Instagram DM me, yes, I do run our Equal Rights Institute pages. I probably won't see it. Like, this person is incredibly lucky. Do you have any idea how many DMs we get in a day? Absurd amounts, and hundreds of comments on top of that. I don't see them all. I just plain don't. I'm very sorry. I couldn't spend my entire life just monitoring that, and I still wouldn't get through it all. So anyways, but I did see this one, and I was like, this is an interesting question. I would love to talk about this, especially with Rebecca, because she and I share this kind of acting background thing. So the initial question that they posed to me was, how is it that you make things that, like, clearly you have these things memorized? Okay, you do this for a living. You have responses to pro-choice questions memorized. And that is true. I do have responses to pro-choice questions memorized. How do you make those things sound genuine and spontaneous when you're talking? And they were specifically referencing like my videos, because I do it in such a way, in like a more acty way. It comes across as genuine and spontaneous, but then I think it also translates to dialogue in person. Like, I have, phrases that I will use again and again with pro-choice people. How do I make that sound and come across in my body language and all those things as genuine and spontaneous? Like, what kind of tools could they then use, could they be thinking about when they're maybe not a trained actor? But how did they come across in that kind of way?
Just to add to that question, I mean, we filmed, for a lot of ours has not seen Equip for Life Academy, but the curriculum that we spent the last like several years making. But part of what made Equip for Life Academy so great, and also takes so long to finish, was that we filmed all these role play dialogues in parks and places, and kind of caused a lot of production headaches for ourselves in post. But like Emily and Meredith, who also helped run the club at St. Olaf and is one of the best dialoguers I've ever spent time with, and I'm so frustrated that I can't hire her too. But she is fabulous. So good. So we got her on the course. We did that's like the best I could do. Is like get her just record a bunch of her, dialoguing, so you can kind of get some of like. She's got a little bit of a different flavor than Emily, which is great. You've got like these different kinds of things. But you guys had to like, I don't know how much time you spent preparing, rehearsing. I just know that I had to bring the cameras and stuff. So you guys showed up ready to go. And we didn't have to do a whole bunch of takes. Like, you clearly had a sense of, like, you, Emily, I mean, you were kind of directing this whole thing, but you knew, like, we're this is starting and where it's ending and what is the purpose of this dialogue, though it wasn't really scripted. So you guys were really acting. Like, I've seen the equal rights argument role play that we recorded with the geese so many times. Almost every donor meeting I've had for the last couple of years, I've seen this video. And every time I'm thinking to myself, they're acting. Like they know what they're going to be saying, but this is like really good acting, which is actually a common thing that people know. They're like, this is like natural. This is like really good.
Yes,
So
amazing.
just
Thank
to
you.
add to that, like, how did you do that? How did you do that in such a way that it didn't seem like acting? And what can pro-lifers learn from that? Because we don't want to teach people to be fake. We've been trying to teach people authenticity and genuineness since day one of ERI. So this seems like there's a natural potential contradiction there. So how?
I have so many thoughts about how we did that, but I want Rebecca to go first.
Yeah. So I think there are two questions here. There's like, how can we do this? There's the like pragmatic question. And then there's the principled question, like, should we do this? Is this like somehow deceptive or fake? We're you calling it acting. And I don't want to like be like deceiving people about anything in my approach in dialogue. I think like because I use filler words, I use thinking pauses in dialogues with pro-choice people that I don't need because I have my responses memorized. Not because I ever sat down to memorize them, just because I've had literally hundreds of these conversations. And once you've said something hundreds of times, you're probably going to say it the same way the next time. And so like my goal in that conversation is not to like deceive the pro-choice person I'm talking with into thinking that I've never said this before, or I haven't thought about this as much as I have. Like they're clearly seeing I'm part of the pro-life club that they do that does this every week. Now people often know that I work full-time in the pro-life movement. I do this for a living. And I'm not trying to like hide that. That's not my purpose in adding filler words or adding thinking pauses or things like that. I think my purpose is I want to come across as genuine and connected to them. I want to be having a conversation, not like giving a lecture to them. So actually, in the same way that when I do give a lecture, like I eliminate the that was ironic, but the filler words like that one, and some of the thinking pauses, not because I'm trying to like lie to people and convince them that I have this whole speech memorized and I'm not trying to think about what I'm going to say next at any point, but just because that's the tone that I'm trying to set. This is a fairly formal kind of environment when I'm giving a lecture. And in the same way, on kind of the opposite end of things, when I'm just having a conversation with people, I want to not do that. Like, I don't want it to be weird and like I'm giving them a lecture. I want us to be having a conversation together. And so, just in the same way we talked about earlier, like I don't use the phrase ad hoc, actually, even if they're going to understand it, because I want to be having a casual conversation. I also use
that's interesting.
Thinking pauses and filler words for the same reason, to make this casual, to make it genuine and a conversation, and not to like come across as like intellectual and snobby and like pre-prepared or delivering a lecture.
The other thing I think that those like thinking pauses and filler words do is it gives the pro-choice person time to process and catch up. Like I almost think of it as I'm being kind to them in this conversation by me not just like barreling through this thing I have memorized. I am doing it slowly. And yes, it's going to come across and essentially sound a little bit like maybe I'm coming up with some of this on the fly, even though I'm actually not. But I'm doing it so that their brain has time to process, because they haven't had as much time to think about this as I have. And I want to be kind to them and give them the space to think about it and not feel like they're just drowning in my monologue of intelligent pro-life things. Like I don't want to drown them. And so I think it's a kind thing to do, to just take a second. In the middle of how you're replying.
Like I think of it a lot. I had the exact same thought this morning. I was like, it reminds me a lot of the way that we train people to use our outreach brochure that has within it pictures of aborted victims. And we use those pictures in a very specific way. Like there's a lot of disagreement within the pro-life movement about how to use graphic pictures, and that is not new. It's an old thing. The way that we do it is with consent. And so when we do outreaches, we have a part of our brochure that's just fetal development images and really helpful to start getting people thinking about when personhood might begin and things like that. It's pretty common. And then we have a middle page that we can turn to with their consent that has 5 first trimester abortion pictures. And then there is a last page that we only use when we really, really need to, that has one very, very, very graphic late-term abortion picture in it, just like the worst picture that we've ever seen kind of a thing. And we train people when we use these pictures, when we get someone's permission to see them, to open up to that page and then to not speak, to just let it sit so that they can see them, because at this point now they are, hopefully you want them to really see these images, and ideally, because they're not unassigned, they're not distracted by how dare you force this on me or other people or like all those other things. It's like it's not there. They're just seeing these, but the human mind needs some time to process that if they're seeing it for the first time. And so our sort of like internal rule, guideline, really more than rule, of like don't speak until they speak after you show them the images, is partly, for me, like just a helpful reminder to myself, because I want to break the awkward silence. I don't like awkward silence. I also speak too fast, and I'm going too fast for people to be processing. And so as I try to slow myself down, or in this case, literally stop myself, they need to see this. This is more important than any words I can say right now. Just like give them that time, and don't get in my own way, or don't get in their way of them changing their own mind.
Yeah. I feel like some very specific things you can do, like if you're looking for practical tips, if you're not naturally an actor, some very practical things you can do during that kind of a space is like if you're watching this, you'll notice that I'm not looking at the camera right now. If I'm imagining this is the pro-choice person and I'm taking a second to think and I want to give them a second to think, I deliberately will stop staring at them. Because
Yes.
staring at them implies like we're about to go on to something else. So like if you've got that brochure in front of you, or if you're just waiting to make your next argument because you're giving it a second to breathe, I might look off into space, and that immediately gives the impression that I'm pondering something. And it gives them the space to feel like they can ponder because
Mhm.
they don't have to fill that silence, because I'm cool. I'm in my own head right now. And I'm not going to fill that silence either. So just taking a second and looking off, and then coming back when you have something to say, and kind of doing that little, and then wind up. Like I'll use a little filler word there with like, but I think where I get stuck is blah de blah. Like that's a
Yeah.
phrase I love. I use it a ton in my conversations. If they make an
Hmm.
argument, I'll often follow the kind of the formula of give a piece of common ground or a reason that what they just said is good. What they just said was a good argument because of X. There's some piece of common ground there or whatever. Then I look off and give it a second to process. And then I come back with, but where I get stuck is this. And then I make my argument. And it's not saying like I think that you're stupid. It's using that filler to be like, but I have this thing in my head that's blocking me from totally agreeing with your argument. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? So that kind of formula to look away, come back with some filler words, that's a very kind of practical acting thing you can do to kind of fill that space. Um, if maybe that doesn't come super naturally to you.
It's like I want to like camp on that example. Like that example is interesting to me, because like is there any, because like when I do that, like I identify with that, like I do the looking off into space thing too. Partly because I finally saw a video on Charisma on Command's channel, which everyone should watch. Charisma on Command's channel is great. But like they've talked sometimes about like it's not actually best to just like 100% of the time in a conversation be staring into someone's eyes. Like that's like uncomfortable for people. So like don't like that. There is a balance between eye contact and kind of breaking that eye contact, just kind of make everyone to kind of put them at ease. But like sometimes when I am doing that, when I glance off like that, there's something I'm really thinking about. I might be pondering, is there a better way for me to communicate what I'm planning to communicate next? Is there some way to connect to them, or something that they've already said? Like, is there some kind of improv way or customizey way I can kind of mess with this? And maybe I don't come up with something, but like I'm pondering something. I'm not completely pretending to ponder. So I want to like dig in. Like, is there a version of, if like we were completely just pretending to ponder and there is no pondering happening at all, it was just kind of a moment, like is there a deceptive version of this? What is too far and gets like too like where there's something to happen where it's no longer helping them, but it could actually be adding some kind of like acting or something to this that could be more of a put off than on, you know what I mean? Like where's the line?
My short answer is I don't know. I don't know where the line is. And I think I ask myself that every time I'm actually doing it.
Hmm.
Because the line, I mean, certainly I can imagine a world where you've for sure gone too far is if you're doing your thinking pause and you're like, huh, that's really, I've never thought about your question before. And they just said something that like is really obvious. Like, don't straight up lie to them and be like, I have no answer to your question. I need 30 seconds to think of one, and then I'm going to think of one. Like, that is obviously too far. But where is that line? I think doing things like saying, huh, just that does communicate you have a really good question, but I don't feel like that's going too far alone.
Yeah.
Because that could be me pondering about anything. And I think it does make them feel like they just said something really interesting that I'm thinking about. But I don't feel like that's quite over the deceptive line. I don't know.
Does this alternative do anything differently or better than the response? I think a lot of times what I'll say there's like, that's a really good question. And I'm trying not to imply it's the first time I've heard this question necessarily, but I do want to compliment the question. Like, there are bad questions.
Right.
You know, there are bad questions.
And
but that's a good question. You
right.
know?
And they could take that to mean that you've never heard the question before, but you're not saying that.
Yes.
You're not trying to mean it that way.
Yes.
I like that. I like that.
Like when I tell Rebecca, jump back in, but like one other like example, like off the top of my head is so there's a story that I tell often in my dialogues and speeches. It comes up in Q&As a lot. There's a specific story that I tell based on a YouTube video called Choosing Thomas. And I would recommend everyone watch this video. It's really, really powerful. It's basically the story of well, I'm gonna have to do a short explanation of this to make the point, but it's going to question. But the short version of that is that a local news station in Colorado was given access to this family who had a horrible pregnancy diagnosis. Their baby had, I think it was trisomy 13. It was one of the really bad trisomies. Their baby was not going to survive long after birth, if it was going to survive till birth. And there's this. It's not a pro-life video. It's like a local news video, and it's beautiful and in so many ways. It's also really, really sad in all of these different ways. And you just kind of get through it, this sense of just how much these parents love this baby and how much they want to fill every second of its short life with love and just treat him as their son. And more times than not, when I tell this story, I cry. Like when I actually tell the story and actually explain what the parents say, I can't usually do it without breaking down. I'm not trying to break down. I am not that good of an actor. I'm impressed by people who can actually do that. I can't do that. It's either genuine or it's not happening. Like I didn't cry this time because I'm not really telling the story in a way that would have its full effect. But if I do, and the thing is, I know at the beginning of telling that story that like I've got like a 3/4 chance that I'm going to be crying by the end of this, at least a little bit. I know that. And I don't mind it. It doesn't stop me, but I also don't try to stop myself from crying either. Like, I know this is probably going to happen because it's happened so many times. It's like I can't basically do it without it. It's been, if we're still here after I told the story 70 times and I'm still kind of weeping a little bit, then it's just like it just really connects with me. So I'm going to do this, and I'm okay with the fact that I know that me getting teary about it might have a good effect on them emotionally. Like the last time I told this story, one of the pro-lifers in the audience, just like an older businessman, like very retired businessman, and not the person that you would expect to tear up from a story. And then he teared up because I teared up. Like it kind of broke him a little bit, and it connected to his heart. So like that can be a good thing. And so like is there acting there? Like, Rebecca, help me figure this out.
Yeah, I think I want to differentiate between acting and deception.
Yes.
I think acting, like intentionally thinking about how to communicate clearly, how to come across as what I actually am, is a good thing in dialogue. We talk about that all the time. We talk about body language and how to not come across as aggressive. Like if you stand face to face with someone, it feels like you're fighting each other. If you stand shoulder to shoulder, it feels like you're on the same team. So you stand shoulder to shoulder. Josh, you sit down on the table because you're really tall and it can feel kind of intimidating. You're trying to lord it over people, even if you're not. So I think there are acting things that can help us communicate what's actually going on for us. And then I think the place I would want to draw the line is I don't think I ever want to be trying to, not just, I don't want to say something that's false, like, oh, I've never thought about that before. But I don't want to like even be trying to give the impression that I've never thought about that before, or that
Yes.
like I'm having to scramble to figure out how to respond to that. I do want to be like, I will do some of the same things that I might do if I were trying to give the impression that I were thinking on my feet. Because some of those same things are also necessary to just like be having a normal, casual conversation and not make it weird. Like in the same way, like
Yeah.
people ask me what my dissertation is about at church all the time. And I have about a 30-second answer to that question. And I have it memorized. Again, not because I sat down to memorize it, but just because I've given it probably 100 times at this point, at least. And because it's a casual conversation, I give it conversationally, even though I could give it memorizedly and oratorially. That's not a word.
It should be though. We're gonna
Okay,
we'll keep it.
we'll do
We'll
with
allow
that. Fun fact, I invented a word for my dissertation.
it. Did you?
Yes.
What's the word? You can't just say that and not say the word.
Expressivistically, which means something different than expressively. And it's a whole rabbit hole. But
Expressivistically?
yeah,
Like referring
it
to
means something that
expressivism?
nobody who's not in academic philosophy would ever choose to mean. It's weirdly deep down the philosophy rabbit hole.
Okay, then I won't ask.
They would never even choose to try to say something like that. I had to invent a new word because who would say this word?
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
I identify with that. Like I'm interested in Emily, if you disagree at all, but I was thinking like the equal rights argument. When we're in dialogue, if I'm going to get into the equal rights argument, like this is a little bit more hard mode. Explaining the equal rights argument to someone well in a way that connects with them is hard. We've spent a lot of time at ERI trying to like perfect even how to teach this, and we don't feel like we've totally landed. We're still figuring out how to explain this really important, really persuasive idea, but it's kind of hard to explain and hard to teach in some ways. It's a 4-step process. So it's like when I'm doing the equal rights argument, on one hand, I don't want to make this person feel like they just accidentally stumbled into like a debate with an expert who's been thinking about this for like 25 years and just because then they're not going to want to stick around. Like that sucks. So I try to, like, when I explain the equal rights argument, which is going to take a few minutes, like done well, I try to never make it seem like I'm generating these ideas live. Like I'm just like stumbling upon this actually like really great philosophical argument. But I'm trying to still figure out a way, like I'm wanting to set it up so that they will stick. I'm like, okay, this is gonna take a minute, but like I think if I explain this in a couple of minutes, it's gonna be like really helpful. And I'm really interested in what you have to say back at me. Like I'm setting them up, and then I'm gonna explain this thing to them, but I'm gonna try to do it in a way where it's not kind of at the top of my head, but still said interestingly. And I'm trying to find jokes in there and things to kind of make it a little bit different every time. Is that the difference? Is that if I were pretending to generate these ideas off the top of my head, then I would be deceiving at that point because I'm so not. Like I know where this is going, but I'm also not wanting to just be like, even indicate with my body language or my tone or the things that I'm choosing to say. I don't want to indicate to this person that like, you don't have a chance. You just stepped into the lion's den, dude. Like, come on, I can't wait for this. I don't feel that way, but it would be really easy to make them feel that way if I said something like, "Oh yeah, my colleagues and I worked for a few years on this paper on de facto guardianship." Like, they're gonna be like, "Okay, never mind, I'm gone." Right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. I really liked what Rebecca said about acting is helping you express the genuine like person that you are
Yeah.
in a way that like we typically think of acting on a stage as like me trying to express this other person, and I'm trying to do it. If I'm a good actor, I'm trying to do it genuinely. I'm trying to really get into the headspace, the body of this other person that I am playing,
Yeah.
and trying to do my best to behave the way that they would, to say things
Yeah.
the way that they would, to react to things that they would. And so I often tell people when I'm like taking them out to do their first outreach. Like I literally just did this. I was out in Oregon with Rebecca. We were doing our awesome launch seminar for Oregon Right to Life. We love doing it. It's so awesome. We work with a bunch of high school kids. We teach them how to do pro-life apologetics for 2 days, and then we take them out to do their very first outreach. And understandably, a lot of these students are really, really nervous. They have gotten all this info like dumped into their brains over 2 days, and now they have to go talk to pro-choice people. And I remember my first time doing outreach, I was terrified, but these are high school students now going out and talking to adults about abortion. Okay, we're not going to a high school because the high schools are on spring break. That's how the high schoolers are here in the room with me at this time. So we can't go talk to other high schoolers. We have to go talk to adults or college students. And so they are understandably terrified. And I tell them, it is totally okay if you are scared and nervous. But the person they are talking to, like Emily is not. Emily is very calm. Even if me is very nervous, I am going to be doing some acting here where I am trying to genuinely express the person that I want to be, basically. It's okay if real me is nervous, but Emily isn't going to come across that way. And so I try to think of it as just like if I was in a play trying to pretend to be this other person, I'm going to try to be the most genuine version of that person that I can. In this case, I'm going to try to be the most genuine version of Emily Geiger that I can be, even though real me might be feeling a little differently. And so I feel like that is how I should behave in conversations with a pro-choice person when I'm doing the equal rights argument, for example, is it is okay to not have real me, who's very smart and has thought about this a million times, show. I want to have genuine Emily Geiger, who is a kind person, who is trying to have a really good dialogue, who thinks this pro-choice person has said some really intelligent things and is going to go really nice and slow. Like, it is okay to do it differently than I would in a lecture setting. And it's okay to come across as having these pauses, doing it in this calm way, because I think I'm trying to get across the real me who like is behind the me that feels nervous. It's almost like there's 3 layers of me. This is getting very confusing in how I'm trying to explain it. But like there's me that's nervous standing here right now. Then there's actual genuine Emily, like who Emily is as a person that's being masked a little bit by nervous me because I have nervous energy right now in this dialogue. And then I am trying to act. There's the frontal layer of Emily and how I'm going to behave in this conversation. And really what I'm trying to do with that frontal layer of acting Emily is channel that first true, genuine Emily and have nervous Emily that is covering up genuine Emily not be present.
So I think I'd actually disagree a little bit with the way that you frame that.
I love
Interesting.
it.
I think so. I totally agree. Like, you don't have to communicate that you're nervous if you're nervous. You don't have to have that show up on your face. And I also think like there are topics related to the abortion debate that are personal for me, and that's probably true for pretty much everybody on the planet. And that can be a really vulnerable thing to have show up in a conversation. And so if somebody says something that brings up an emotional response in me because of something personal that I don't want in that conversation, I do not have to bring that. I think
Totally agree with that.
there is a difference between like not bringing all of an emotion that I do have and like trying to pretend I have an emotion that I don't have.
Yes.
Or trying to pretend that I'm pondering when I'm not pondering anything. I think it is good to like stop and ponder in the middle of a dialogue, and that kind of gives the pro-choice person space to ponder as well. I think I would tend to think that it's actually better, both pragmatically and on principle, not to at any point be thinking, okay, this is not what's going on for me right now, but I want to act like it is. I will obviously do that in practice dialogues when I'm playing pro-choice. Because I will say a bunch of things that I don't think, but everybody knows that I'm acting here.
Yeah.
So in an actual dialogue with a real live pro-choice person, I will, choose not to bring all of the emotions that are going on for me. And that happens in conversations about any number of things all over the place, not just in like practice dialogues or real dialogues, but just in like ordinary conversations in everyday life. But I will not, at least I don't think that I do, and I do try not to like give an impression that something is going on for me that's not. And I think it actually is helpful in part because I think people read people pretty well on an intuitive level. There's been like
Yeah.
brain research into this, and your right brain and left brain and all kinds of stuff. Like when you walk into a room, before your left brain has time to do anything, before the part of your brain that uses words and like analyzes has time to do anything, your right brain has already read the mood in this room and your body has adjusted accordingly. So our right
Really?
brains move really fast and they read people really well. And so not only do I think on principle, I don't want to I would feel deceptive about trying to give an impression of something that I'm feeling or experiencing that I'm not. But I also think that tends to come across to people as fake. I think, Emily, you touched on this, but like good acting is actually experiencing that, is trying to like experience to some, at least some measure of what the character actually feels, I think is how good acting happens. And so in the same way that like, if I'm on stage trying to act like my husband just died, I've never been married, and I'm not feeling some measure of that, that's going to come across as fake. I think the same thing is true in a dialogue. Like, not only would I like not want to, for principled reasons, like come across as though I'm emotional when I'm not, I also think it just doesn't work. It feels fake to people. Whether they can like name that and analyze that or not, it's going to impact how they engage in the conversation.
Okay, now that's super interesting. So let me push back on that a little bit because
Yeah.
I'm as someone who, if you think Emily has nervous energy while she's talking to a pro-choice person, then wait until you watch me and my energy, especially if I've got to be like trying to start a conversation in front of the pool table, which I hate and am terrible at. So I have a lot of nervous and internal energy happening that I'm definitely trying to mask because I don't want people to feel like I'm afraid of them. Like, I'm not afraid of them. I probably have a bunch of other things, like I'm nervous about the way that I'm going to make pro-life people come across, or I mean, there might be like personal, like I'm a people pleaser too. Like there's stuff in there too. But like, so what is there a good version, Rebecca, of trying to sort of mask some of that nervous energy that I don't want to have kind of mess up my dialogues because it's sort of like making me seem maybe like more afraid of people than I actually am? Like something like that? Like, come back. Help us
Yeah,
find the
yeah.
nuance.
So two things there. One, I think there's a distinction I want to make between like not bringing all of what is there to the conversation emotionally for you,
Yes.
and like trying to like put on or pretend that you have something that's not there. So I don't think the first one is deceptive. I, at least right now, and I'm open to pushback, but do think the second one is at least slightly deceptive in ways that I would want to avoid.
Say more. Like I like that distinction's really interesting, but that was subtle for I think for a lot of people. You're like, wait, what with us? They're Pam Beasley, like it's the same picture. I'm not sure what the difference is there. So can you expand on the difference between not bringing everything that you're feeling to the table versus I don't even remember exactly how you put the alternative.
Yeah, like putting on or pretending to have something I don't have.
Yeah.
So like I think people do this a lot, often with anger, and I think it's a very good and a very important thing to be able to do with anger. I think there are
How
often
so?
cases where it makes sense for people to feel some measure of anger. I'm not talking about dialogue, although it can show up there too. But just in like general conversation circumstances at work or in personal lives or things like that. Like fully expressing anger. Like maybe my body feels like I want to punch something right now. I want to punch a pillow, and that's not appropriate in this conversation. Maybe I can do that in my room alone later.
Right.
And could actually like be a really big deal. Like oftentimes people experience some measure of anger when they're watching children, because children can be difficult sometimes.
Mhm.
And it is a very important thing, and I think not a deceptive thing, actually, to not bring all of that anger and express it with children.
Yes.
And so I think that's a skill that everybody has, everybody should have, and everybody uses all the time of like, I've got some stuff that's going on for me internally, and not all of it belongs in this conversation.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
I feel like I want to offer a modified way of
Mhm.
explaining my idea, because I don't think you and I are as far off as I think or you thought
Cool.
that we were. I don't know. I was coming up with like words to describe what I'm saying. So I feel like there is this thing called true Emily. Like that is the real me. Then there is what I'm going to call here Emily. Like the Emily that is in this moment right now, standing at this table, feeling nervous, feeling hungry. Maybe I'm a little cold. and I am like, there's the sun in my eyes, and like there's a lot of distractions and things going on for here Emily that are causing here Emily to feel a particular way about this conversation. And so what I encourage pro-life people to do is use acting Emily, which is that third like frontal Emily. Use acting Emily to try to channel true Emily into this conversation. And I think you're very right, Rebecca, that I don't need and I shouldn't bring every element of true Emily into acting Emily, because there may be things that are brought up for me that I don't want to bring into this conversation. They aren't appropriate to bring into this conversation. Whatever the reason is, there are elements of true Emily. It's not like I should bring every part of true Emily forward. I don't want true Emily to run this conversation. But I want to use acting Emily to try to bring elements of true Emily in, just like acting Emily would bring in as much as I can from true person whose husband has died. Like, I am trying to bring forward real emotion, real things. Like, it reminds me of something that we say when we're teaching pro-lifers how to respond to the question of rape. We say, I'm not asking you to fake compassion. I am asking you to express the genuine compassion you have for survivors of rape. And true Emily has genuine compassion for survivors of rape. Here, Emily might be struggling to feel that compassion right now because I'm starving and there's sun in my eyes and I'm cold and I'm standing here and I'm nervous, and like feeling that compassion is a hard thing at this moment because of the external factors that are going on. And so I'll put on acting Emily to try to help me channel the genuine compassion I actually have. If you lack that compassion, as Rebecca was saying, like if you don't feel this emotion, I think it would be wrong for acting Emily to pretend I have this thing I don't. But I think it's okay for acting Emily to like help bring true Emily's emotions forward when here Emily is struggling to do that because of things that are going on in this conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I might agree with you that that's not necessarily deceptive in a problematic way. I think it actually still has a pragmatic problem. I think it is much more effective at coming across as genuinely compassionate when you can, instead of like trying to like put it on in for acting Emily, if you can instead like help yourself kind of connect back to true Emily and have like it sounds like you're kind of thinking, and push back on this if this isn't it, but like if you've got compassion on your heart, then it's not deceptive to put compassion on your face. And maybe because of things that are going on in the conversation, it's really hard to like get the compassion from your heart to your face because you're nervous and you got a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And so it's okay, is my understanding you were saying. It's not deceptive to like choose to put compassion on your face because it is in your heart, rather than having it like naturally show up from your heart because you've got stuff in the way of that with things that are going on in the conversation. And I think, like, I agree with you, that's not deceptive. I think it is going to come across as fake, at least subconsciously to people. I think it is more effective if we can teach people and teach ourselves to like, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to turn the table around so the sun's not in my eyes? Do I need to like stop and have a snack? One thing I talk to people about a lot is like, the reason this whole conversation, like people can feel like I have to be having this conversation because this matters so much. People are dying. And so it doesn't matter what my needs are. And I'm like, okay, the only reason abortion matters is because people matter. But if people matter, you matter too. So let's be consistent and treat you like you matter. And also, by the way, this will make you a more effective dialoguer. And I think this might be one of those times where I want to like ask in that moment, okay, what do I need? Do I need to not have the sun in my eyes? Do I need to stop and to have a snack? Do I need to, ask somebody else to take my place at the table for a second so that I can step away for a minute and take a few deep breaths or like shake myself out or something like that. And it's not that all of the nerves will go away, but I think there are ways that we can teach people and things that we can practice ourselves that can help make it easier to connect back to our actual hearts and have what's showing up on our face not just match what's in our hearts, but like come from what's in our hearts in a way that comes across to people as much more genuine.
Okay. Acting question. This might be an analogy to like what you're saying, but I don't know acting, so this is going to be helpful for you. You experts come back at me. So I know that there are some actors who are better than others at like being able to like cry on command. And I've seen sometimes I feel like Jimmy Fallon has asked probably at least a half a dozen different actresses about Crying on Command on this. So I can feel like I've heard even this explained a little bit mechanically sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like sometimes what people are able to do is when they know that they need to have this really powerful scene and that they're going to try to cry in it, that they are often internally connecting to some actual hard thing from their past that is analogous in some way, that they can try to feel these things the way that like their character is supposed to be feeling, and just some people are more in touch with that than others. And I think from what I understand, it probably takes a lot of work to actually have this like easy access to that side of you that then you can just like, I mean, there's one actress that literally I remember, she's like, I can cry out of whichever eye you tell me to cry out of. If you just want
Wow.
one tear. Yeah. So it's like, do you want the right eye or the left eye kind of a thing.
Wow.
Like that also takes probably a lot of practice and figuring out a lot of like physical mechanic stuff that I can't even begin to imagine. But I just wonder, all that to say, I can imagine there being some pro-life people that have done like very little of whatever that work is, whatever that psychological, emotional processing therapy, whatever stuff is happening that makes it possible to do that. Like we want to try to help people to show the genuine compassion that they have, since we brought up the question of rape. So I have done a lot of trainings for a lot of pro-life people, and the goal being to try to help them show the genuine compassion that they have. And we always tell them, if you do not fake compassion, just like Emily said, if you're faking it, don't call yourself pro-life, go talk to your pastor or priest or a therapist. That's a more important. We don't need more people in the pro-life movement that feel like they're losing debate points just because they said that rape is a bad thing or something like that. It's like, no, we need to be able to do that. I've said, like, after working with certain people, I came away as like, okay, there are people that know the definition of rape, but they don't know what it actually is. And you can tell that as they sort of attempt to communicate feelings about it. It comes across like this, like really wooden. And so we don't want that. So but I think what I'm trying to do with them is I'm trying to like get them in touch with how bad this actually is. I don't always know the best way to do that, but I want to help pro-life people who are not in as much touch with those things as they ought to be, to genuinely kind of have the compassion that they should have for the survivors of sexual assault that we are going to come across in our conversations. Like, how would you recommend people to go from a place where they're not able to do that very well at all, maybe just because they're completely unpracticed, but they want to be able to do that better? How can they do that without adding any kind of anything that'll even maybe accidentally come across as fake because people are maybe so subconsciously good at picking up on things?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's exactly the right question. And I think the answer depends. So because I'm not trying to teach people to put something on their face, I'm trying to teach them to like bring it up from their heart. Like it's more a matter of making sure it is in the heart and then like removing barriers to that, to it showing up on your
Mm.
face than it is trying to like create a channel for that to happen. Because we already have a channel for that to happen. Like it's
Mm.
natural for emotions to show up on our faces. And some people have learned not to do that. Some people have actually learned not to do that in order to survive, because of various things that they've experienced. And so there are, I think, several different things that can get in the way of genuine compassion showing up on someone's face. And I think the solution to that, I think we'd probably all agree, is not like teach people how to put compassion on their face, but like remove the barriers to that happening naturally so that it is genuine.
Mm.
And so I think you just named two possible barriers. One, maybe there's just not compassion in their heart about the case of rape yet because they don't really understand what it is and how much damage and harm it does and how much of a violation of a person's dignity it is. And I think the answer to that is to go learn. So I actually, when I teach the case of rape, I will talk a good bit, not graphically, about the harm that rape does and how lasting it is and why it's so harmful, because it's a betrayal of a person's dignity, and usually a betrayal by somebody that they should be able to trust.
Mm.
And that is devastating. And it works itself out in physical ways and in psychological ways. And I will go into some detail about those, because I think it is important for people to understand, just in general, I think it happens a lot. And as a society, we do not do a good job of taking it seriously and responding well. And how we respond has a huge impact on the survivor's ability to heal, actually. Rachel Den Hollander has talked a lot about this, about helping people who don't have a background understand the impact of sexual abuse. I'd strongly recommend pretty much any YouTube video she's made or YouTube video of a talk that she's given.
Amazing. She's amazing.
One potential barrier is I don't really feel the impact of what sexual abuse does to people. And that is fixable by coming to understand the impact and noticing what's coming up in your own heart and in your own body as you learn that. Not just trying to like memorize the information as though you're a brain on a stick, because you're not. That's a heresy. It's called Gnosticism. And it's just also just obviously false, whether you're Christian or not. We have bodies and we are connected to them. We're not just brains. And so, yeah, I think that's one possible barrier, and that's a way to remove that particular barrier.
So I think, Rebecca, I think I agree with everything that you're saying. I think that absolutely the best method is to remove the barriers from our heart to our face. Like, that is what we should do. I think where you and I are going to disagree is that I don't think it's possible to remove all of the barriers. I think you need to do the work to remove as many of them as you can. But I think there are inevitably, when you're in it, especially if we're talking a first outreach situation, like if this is one of your very first times doing this, you don't do this professionally like we do, like it inevitably a nerves barrier that you just cannot get rid of, along with an inherent distraction barrier. Like, it is going to be hard. Like, if I'm doing an outreach on a college campus, or if I'm talking to the person cutting my hair about abortion, because I'm a normal adult who just doesn't go to college campuses and talk about abortion, but I'm sitting in a hair salon and it comes up on the TV in the corner about the news, and I just kind of get into a natural conversation about this. There are inherent nerves there. There's also inherent distraction of like, I have to go in 30 minutes to go to the grocery store. Am I going to have time to do this? Like, I also have, there's other people listening. Are they hearing what I'm saying? Like, I cannot help but have some barriers between my heart and my face, no matter how hard I try. And so that's where I think a little bit of acting Emily is okay, to help me get true Emily out here to the front and like bypass here Emily. I think I absolutely have to do your work first. I think removing as many barriers as possible. Definitely. Do not just be trying to use acting Emily to avoid having to move the barriers. But I think that a little bit of acting is inevitable and okay to help us to channel true Emily. When truly having just true Emily do this conversation isn't going to be possible because of the external factors happening.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you that can definitely happen. Like, there's never going to be a conversation where there are no barriers. Actually, I wrote my senior thesis in undergrad on the philosophy of acting. And I said there, like, I think if I were to play myself on stage and do a good job, like, the version of me on stage would actually be more like the real Rebecca than the way that I engage in everyday life. Because on stage, you're not having to think about what am I going to say next? What am I going to do next? Like, all of actors' training and in rehearsal itself is designed to get you to the point where you can be completely present in the moment and connected with your other actors and in that conversation. And so I want to make real life as much like that as possible, not in the sense that we should all be on a stage all the time, but like remove barriers to genuinely connecting with and interacting with people. And I think you're right. Some of those barriers will get removed as you get better at dialogue. Like, I will have to think less about what am I going to say next, because as we discussed, I'll basically have it memorized eventually.
Right. And you'll theoretically be less nervous the more that you do this than your very first time doing an outreach.
Not zero nervous, but less nervous.
Right, but less.
Yeah. So I agree with you that happens. I think I would tend to lean toward responding slightly differently when that happens. I think I would actually rather have someone have a little bit less emotion show up on their face than have like this like acting Rebecca emotion show up on their face that's not coming out of their heart, because actually primarily for a pragmatic reason. I don't think it's deceptive necessarily to put something on your face that is actually in your heart when it's not coming from your heart to your face. But I do think it is going to come across as fake. And I think that's going to have an impact on how the pro-choice person perceives you, at least subconsciously.
Okay, I had a couple of other quick, like, acting related thoughts on this as we kind of wrap this up because I know that we've been here for a while. And so one thing that I was thinking about this morning was I was reflecting on especially some of the conversations that I've been having recently with some of my friends and colleagues about politics. Um, there, I can get rhetorical sometimes. Like we kind of like Tim and I kind of had this like anti-rhetoric thing, like when we started URI, because rhetoric can be used by people that are very, very good at it to make foolish ideas sound very wise. And so it's kind of like, so we're kind of like just a little suspicious and skeptical of good rhetoric while still acknowledging that, of course, yes, logos and ethos and pathos are all three helpful things to have in here. So like it can't, we don't want to just like completely strip all rhetoric out. But like, I've noticed lately, and you guys have seen this in staff meetings sometimes, and depending on what we're debating, like there's a kind of rhetorical debatey Josh that can come out, especially if he's angry
This is true.
about
This is very
something.
true. We have seen it.
I get more rhetorical, I get more a little bit more argumentative. Sometimes funny things happen, but like I know when I am being more rhetorical. I know when I am saying things that sound a little bit more like an Aaron Sorkinism on West Wing, like it's got a little bit of punch to it or something. You know what I mean? Like I can tell there's like just kind of complete, like just straight up, I'm not trying to add anything. And sometimes I'm really into it and I add a little bit of extra rhetorical punch. And here's my point, is when I'm doing that, I think I should, tell me if you disagree, but I think that I should be attempting, and I don't always, but I should be attempting to do like an extra check on myself on what I'm saying, because I believe that it is intrinsically more persuasive to be in that rhetorical mode. Like it is going to be easier to change people's minds sometimes by going rhetorical, which is why people do it. But because it can be used, it's like the great power, great responsibility thing. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to start turning on the Josh rhetoric, I better like really make sure I'm right and not accidentally lead someone down the wrong path. And they're being, persuaded not by a good argument, but by a clever turn of phrase or analogy or something that I made. Come back at me.
I think that seems right to me. I think there are like ways of doing rhetoric that are just always bad. And
Say more.
I mean, I feel like, for at least in my head, theater kid, the classic example for me of rhetoric used badly is the Friends, Romans, Countrymen speech in Julius Caesar.
So I don't know enough theater to actually know enough about that speech. Educate me, Rebecca. Like I know it starts Friends, Romans, Countrymen. I've seen Bugs Bunny, but like help me understand.
Wait, what? I have not seen this Bugs Bunny. I need to see this Bugs Bunny.
Referenced in at least a couple of Bugs Bunny things. Like I think like the opera type play on thing. I know that the Bugs Bunny said Friends, Romans, Countrymen. And things. I'm almost positive someone's going to fact check me in the comments, be like, actually, you didn't do it. But anyway, I know it's a thing, but I don't know enough about Julius Caesar, the play, not that particular play. So educate us. What is this awesome theater kid example of rhetoric being used badly that me, the not theater kid, would have no idea about?
Okay, so it starts, Friends, Romans, Countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. So he's speaking at Caesar's funeral by the permission of the people who assassinated him. And he's saying all sorts of nice things about them. Brutus is an honorable man. Yeah, absolutely. Brutus, honorable man, 100%. He doesn't say 100% because he's Shakespeare, but basically that. So he says, I'm not going to praise Caesar here. Like, I'm not trying to make you think well of Caesar. I'm just trying to bury him. And I'm going to invite you, at the end of the speech, he says, what cause withhold you then to mourn for him? So inviting people to mourn. But really, he's saying the opposite of what he wants to convey, I think. He is trying to work the crowd up into a frenzy, furious at Brutus and the others for killing Caesar. And because of his rhetorical situation, he has to do it very indirectly, very sneakily, very, I think, in this case, deceptively. So he's like talking as though he's like trying to puzzle this through for himself. And like, how could Caesar be ambitious? Like, how could he be wanting power in a bad way when like he was offered the crown at that festival and he turned it down like 3 times? but Brutus says he's ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. And so he's acting like he's thinking through this himself and trying to figure out Brutus has to be right here, but I don't see it. When in fact, he's trying to convince everybody there that Caesar was absolutely not ambitious and he was an awesome, loving ruler. And now we should go riot and attack Brutus and stuff.
So we should not be using rhetoric to be like, we're going to pretend to like completely live generate this idea that we know where we're going to end up. And we know the goal is to convince a whole bunch of people to go do a certain thing. That level of kind of fakery.
Yeah, I think I would call that full-on duplicitous. And yet, like, I think the direction that I am most likely to err is, like, just being, I don't know, completely upfront and completely unedited, and feeling like I have to do that for principled reasons. I tend to be over-scrupulous. And, like, Jesus thought really intentionally about how he interacted with different groups of people. He had some people ask him, "Are you the Messiah?" And he didn't just say, "Yep." When it, like, my bent would have been to be really upfront about that, and it wouldn't have been wise, and it wouldn't have been the most loving thing for the people that he was talking to. So there is like a messy middle kind of thing there, and I think probably Emily and I are naturally pulled in different directions, and the truth is somewhere in the middle on some of these things.
This is what we're about, is living in the messiness and trying to dig in and try to figure out. I haven't heard anyone have this kind of a discussion about this ever in my life. I wish I had heard pro-lifers having this conversation 15, 20 years ago that I could have been thinking about and then modeling off of, but I don't hear people talk about this. I love that we got this question.
Yeah. I think, Rebecca, you just hit the nail on the head with what I want people to take away from this, which is that we don't know what the exact answer is, but I think you're probably right that it's somewhere between you and I, because I think we're close together. We're not as far apart as maybe it seemed like we were earlier in this conversation, but you definitely err more on the side of like 100%. I don't want to call it honesty, but like 100% not acting of like only the genuine emotions, whereas I am more on the side of it's okay to use some acting to help you get there. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And you also need to know yourself as a pro-life advocate. And where are you? Are you more on the Rebecca side or more on the me side? Who is the person who needs to be challenging you right now? So that when you're thinking about your dialogues, do you need to be saying, "Oh, I should be trying to be a little more like Emily," or should I be trying to be a little more like Rebecca? Who am I naturally, and how can I try to pull to the center? Because we all are here to improve. All of us constantly get feedback, give each other feedback, things we write, things we do. We are not perfect at this either. And I think it's really helpful to kind of, identify where you are on that spectrum and how we can be the most authentic pro-life advocates. Because I think that's what we want, is we want pro-life people to be the most authentic, most genuine they can be. And it's just a question of how do we help them get there?
Yeah. And I think maybe the other takeaway that we both agree on is be doing the emotional work to be able to remove more and more of those barriers as you go on. And part of that is just having dialogue experience and getting more comfortable with that. Part of that is also maybe exposing yourself to some of the details of the type of harm. Certainly, like, notice what is your posture toward your own heart around things that you have experienced harm in, whether that's something related to the abortion conversation or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think our ability to connect to our own pain is really closely tied to our ability to connect to other people's pain. So do some kind of heart analysis, brain analysis on yourself, and get kindly curious about what's going on for you when someone shares something that's painful for them, or when somebody brings up a political topic that's painful for other people, and be doing the emotional work. I'd also highly recommend a podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves podcast. Talks a lot about people's stories and the ways that impacts our brains and our ability to connect to other people and come across compassionately. So be doing that work, be removing those barriers. And then, like Emily said, take what you need to away from this conversation about what to do with the barriers that remain.
We did it. I'm so excited to finally be podcasting with both of you. Like, this is clearly this is going to be amazing. The episodes might not be short, but we're going to have really good discussions and dialogues and debates, and I am looking forward to all of those that I don't even know what they're going to be. This is really, really cool and exciting. So thank you, Rebecca and Emily, for being here for this. And we're going to, I don't know exactly what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out. I got an update video I need to make as well. But we are working behind the scenes in the midst of trying to get Equip for Life Academy out to as many schools as we can. In the midst of dealing with a mild fundraising crisis, we are wanting to get podcasts and all the other things that we used to do back going regularly. And so subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you don't already subscribe to the TikTok, then you are missing out on so much of the amazing stuff that Emily and Rebecca do here on our TikTok and Instagram, and Instagram and all the other places. You don't have to have TikTok. You don't want to have TikTok to see the awesome TikTok videos.
Instagram is more popular than TikTok these days for us. So follow us on Instagram. It's awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Equipped for Life podcast, a project of Equal Rights Institute. Equal Rights Institute uses speaking, writing, YouTube videos, podcasts, online courses, and campus outreach to help pro-life advocates in the areas of practical dialogue tips, relational apologetics, pro-life philosophy, and sidewalk counseling. If you've been helped by this podcast, please consider supporting it by making a donation at equalrightsinstitute.com.